The UK government has approved the construction of a vast new Chinese embassy complex in East London, despite concerns about security and its impact on political exiles in the capital. The decision brings to an end, for now at least, the saga that has been running since 2018 over the site at Royal Mint Court near Tower Bridge. However, residents of Royal Mint Court plan to mount a legal challenge to the decision within weeks, amid concerns they could be forced out of their homes and potentially delaying the project by months or years. MPs from across the political spectrum voiced their opposition to the application, although the security services have said they can handle the risks of espionage that may stem from the enlarged site, which sits close to data cables that run to the City of London. The former head of GCHQ's National Cybersecurity Centre, Kieran Martin, said on Sunday that the British intelligence agencies would not allow the new mega embassy to go ahead if it posed unmanageable risks. Although officials say there has been no political input in the planning process, the green light is likely to smooth relations before Keir Starmer's visit to China, expected at the end of January. Beijing has made the embassy a priority in the UK-China relationship. Xi Jinping, China's leader, raised the matter directly with the Prime Minister in their first phone call in August 2024. The UK's plans to redevelop its own outpost in China's capital have been blocked for years by Xi's government because of the London embassy row. Residents of Royal Mint Court plan to mount a legal challenge within weeks if Steve Reed, the local government secretary, approves China's plans to build a vast new embassy at the site by the Tower of London on Tuesday. Mark Nygate, the treasurer of the local Royal Mint Court Residents Association, said people living near the proposed development had concerns about government interference in what is supposed to be an independent process. The group has raised nearly £37,000 out of the £144,000 required to instruct lawyers to seek a judicial review if the decision goes against them. Others, Nygate added, had promised to make further donations if it came to it. China already owns the freehold of residential properties next to the site, and Nygate and other people living there fear that if the development goes ahead, they will one day be kicked out. We will be looking directly at the 230 flats they want to build for embassy staff and guests. They won't want us here, he said. Campaigners against the development received a legal opinion in September from Lord Banner KC, arguing that the Labour government had predetermined the case by approaching it with a closed mind. They would have 6 weeks to file a challenge to the decision in the High Court, which could lead to months or years more of legal argument, but it would also allow for a window of time during which Keir Starmer may be able to make a trip to Beijing, the first time a British Prime Minister has visited for 8 years. One issue dates back to 2018, when Boris Johnson was Foreign Secretary. At that time, he sent a letter to the Chinese ambassador indicating he was happy for Royal Mint Court, acquired by China for £255 million, to be formally deemed a diplomatic location, even though the embassy had not been built. It said, "I am pleased to confirm that today I have agreed to grant consent for Royal Mint Court to be designated as diplomatic premises on the basis of your assurances and the further detail provided by the Chinese ambassador in London." However, last week, in 11th-hour correspondence between interested parties before the expected decision on Tuesday, the Foreign Office sought to qualify Johnson's apparently firm commitment. Officials said last week that an undisclosed note verbale, a private communication between governments, said the consent was conditional on the embassy obtaining any necessary planning permission, and the consent may be withdrawn if this was not obtained. Ian Duncan Smith, a co-chair of the Inter-Parliamentary Alliance on China, IPAC, wrote on Friday to planning officials handling the case. He said the process was unfair because the source material was not attached, and that Johnson's comments appeared to suggest to China the development was certain to be approved. Though IPAC had previously obtained a leaked copy of the Johnson letter, the contents of the note verbale are unknown. Without the text of the note verbale, it is impossible to determine which instruments of domestic and international law it seeks to engage, the Conservative MP wrote. Duncan Smith also argued that it was highly irregular for an informal side note to have more weight than a signed letter from a government minister. Johnson's letter appeared to amount to a binding international commitment that would mean the planning issue had already been prejudged. China's original planning application was rejected by the local Tower Hamlets Council in 2022, then resubmitted in 2024 and called in by Reid's predecessor, Angela Rayner, in October of that year. Campaigners against the embassy also highlight comments made by Starmer to China's President Xi Jinping at the G20 summit in November 2024. At the time, the Prime Minister said, "You raised the Chinese embassy building in London when we spoke on the telephone. We have since taken action by calling that application." Campaigners also raised concerns about the potential spying risk from the new site, which is located near high-speed data cables, but MI5 has indicated that it does not consider the risks posed as greater than normal. Some officials have argued that consolidating China's existing 7 sites into one has advantages for the host country. MI5 officers told the House of Commons Speaker at a private meeting that they can tackle the risks of a proposed Chinese super embassy in London, opening the door to its approval. The Guardian understands that in a meeting held with Lindsay Hoyle in the summer, senior figures from the security service indicated they were very relaxed about the prospect of a 20,000 square meter embassy being constructed at Royal Mint Court near Tower Bridge. It is considered that the espionage risks stemming from the large outpost can be managed. China has long had a diplomatic presence in the UK, with its existing embassy on Portland Place dating back over a century. Keir Starmer is planning to travel to China for his first bilateral visit in January or February next year, according to several people briefed on the plans, but insiders believe that any trip is contingent on the embassy being green-lit next month. China also recruits people online. Earlier this week, MI5 accused 2 LinkedIn headhunters based in China as acting as fronts for the country's powerful Ministry of State Security, seeking to recruit politicians and their associations. An espionage alert was circulated to MPs and peers, warning about the activities of 2 LinkedIn accounts under the names of Amanda Q and Shirley Shen. A Conservative spokesperson said, when Conservatives were in government, the planning application for the mega embassy was thrown out, and the Chinese only pushed it again after Labour were elected. Since the application was resubmitted, the Conservatives have led the charge in opposing the Chinese spy hub. Ministers have come under pressure over the embassy proposal and their broader approach to China after the surprise collapse of a trial against 2 men accused of spying for Beijing. Christopher Cash, a former parliamentary researcher, and Christopher Berry, a teacher, both denied the charges under the Official Secrets Act. In a Commons debate on Tuesday, the Conservatives demanded that the government publish the minutes of a Whitehall meeting held on September 1st to discuss the implications of the trial. Key figures involved in the case gave conflicting accounts about why it collapsed at a parliamentary committee hearing this week. Prosecutors said the fault lay entirely with the evidence they received from the government, while the government official who drafted the evidence said he had been given legal advice that it would be enough.